Welcome back, subscribers, to this series on how to draw hair. This will be the fourth video in the series, and we're looking at type 3 hair today, and that is curly hair. Previously, we've looked at how to draw straight hair and wavy hair, and in the last video next week, we'll look at coily hair. But for this video, we're going to draw how to draw curly hair, and it's going to be quite a large amount of curly hair. Now, as you see, I just have this roughed in face, this outlined face, and we're going to put some curly hair on top of this face. We're going to need 4 drawing implements for this particular lesson. The first 2 are pencils. So we have, first of all, a hard pencil. I'm using an H here, but you could use an H, a 2H, a 4H, anything you have. And this is just to get the outlines down and some of the construction lines or guidelines. We're going to use that. And then you're going to also need a softer pencil. I have an 8B, but you could use a 6B or a 4B, anything to give you a little bit more of a soft touch, which will be darker, but also more easy to smudge. These pencils are both made by Staedtler. It's a German company that makes these great pencils. You could use Faber-Castell, Derwent, or anything you have on hand, as long as one is relatively hard and the other is relatively soft. The other 2 things that I would recommend you use, first of all, this is a smudging stick or a paper stump. Some people have different names for them, but it's basically rolled paper designed for artists, and it allows you to create soft lines from hard lines. So for example, you can smudge it out to create these kind of soft lines. And you can see how this is already going to be quite useful. And then lastly, you're going to need an eraser. I happen to have here a Mono Zero by a company called Tombow. And this is a clickable eraser, and it's really good for small details. If you don't have one of these, you can use a regular eraser, but it would be more difficult, and I would highly recommend going down to your local art store or Amazon and picking up a Tombow Mono Zero or an equivalent fine detail eraser. So let's get right into it. And before we get right into it, I'll just say that today's lesson will be drawn from my book, The New Artist's Guide to Drawing, out and available now at all major bookstores like Barnes & Noble. Amazon can be a good, perfect gift for Christmas if there's somebody in your life that you would like to share the gift of drawing with. We're going to be looking at page 80, this page here, which is in the How to Draw Hair section. And I have different kinds of hair before I get into the different aspects of the face and so on. So that's my shameless plug for the new book. It is about $20 in the US and about $30 in Canada. So we'll be referencing this all the way through. And let's do it. We have step 1 is to kind of create a rough outline of where you would like that hair. So I'm gonna start maybe up here, following the shape of the head. And I'm gonna have some curls that kind of come down, but for now, we'll pick roughly where the hairline is, and I'm gonna bring it down her face, kind of all the way, maybe across, and all the way over here. It's gonna be quite large, so pull a lot of curls here, down on the other side. Something like this. We're gonna see this whole line of her face, and then curling around back there. So construction lines are done. I'll just grab my eraser now and erase that part of the skull that I'm not going to need. And we're not going to see the ear either. The hair is going to be quite thick. Sometimes with straight hair you can see a little bit of that ear poking through, but not here. Now notice that I'm drawing this construction line very, very lightly, and that's because it's going to be mostly erased. Now, with that construction line in, we're going to get that hard pencil and draw some more interior construction lines. And the idea here is that depending on if you have short curls like this, or else longer curls, if it's really grown out, then those lines can be quite different. We're going to go with longer curls for this one. So imagine starting up here, and then, now you don't need to really worry too much about what these curls look like, but I'm just doing little squiggles and kind of mapping out where I'd like these things. Following the shape of the head. So they're kind of coming from the top and coming down this way. Maybe some more squiggles. And this is just mapping. What we're going to really draw the curls with our dark pencil for the most part, and smudge that dark pencil in. That's the plan. Cover the whole thing dark, smudge it all in, and then using the eraser to erase some of the details. This is going to give us an idea of where we would like to have the curls shaped. So they're mostly coming down, squiggling all around here, and he's kind of falling over. Notice that hard pencils create these sharp lines like this. And when we're doing curls, we don't really want sharp lines, we want soft lines. The difference between a hard line and a soft line is a hard line is thin, whereas a soft line is kind of blends out on the edges. It has some width to it, and you can achieve that by smudging with your finger or just using a softer pencil. So that's, we're kind of mapping out now. I'm going to erase some of those guidelines that were just a little bit too ambitious way up top and around. So that's why I wanted you to put those in quite lightly. Okay, the next step is to start to think about where we want the really dark areas and the really light areas. So I'm grabbing my softer pencil now. The really dark areas are going to be here, where there's less light hitting, and here, just under here, and then generally speaking toward the bottom and less on the top. And then another thing I'll say is that instead of holding your pencil like this, like how you write, which is a great way to use the tip of your pencil, what you want to do is change your position to an over grip. And that will force you to bring your pencil down closer parallel to the paper. So instead of having this kind of angle, which is great for lines, you now have this kind of angle. So you're using the whole side of that lead. So I prefer something like this, where I'm holding it way back and then using my wrist, not my fingers, but my wrist. So I'm just gonna start that, and I'm going to go very, very lightly, not all the way to the outside edge, because we're going to treat it like a live edge. And I'm not just coloring in here, I'm using those guidelines that I've placed down to kind of plan out where I want these curls. So I'm sort of coloring around them, so to speak. And this is going to give you a little bit of texture. You don't want to just create a mass. That's going to give you a helmet effect, which is something you definitely want to stay away from when you're working with hair. That hair helmet. It's really easy to slip into that. You have to use the same kind of line, which is this side of the pencil kind of line, but you can change up the pressure, and it's going to give you some light areas and dark areas. Now I'm using short lines and broad lines, or thick, in other words. Short and thick. And then I'm going dark in some areas and light in other areas. And you can see that it's going to come together reasonably quickly here. I'm more or less scribbling in, and I'm staying away from that very far edge. We're going to come to that in a moment. Keep changing the angle of your pencil. You don't want to get too many lines in the same direction. That's going to look artificial. So keep changing that angle of your pencil. All the way down. And just blast through this part here. Using that side of my pencil, changing the pressure so I get some areas darker and some areas lighter. Okay, and now I'm going to choose this paper smudging stick. And I'm going to lightly go over all of those areas. And you can see that anywhere that's still white that I've left is going to now become just a very lighter tone. And anywhere that's dark is still darker. This is going to fill in the whole area. It also gives me still a lot of texture. And that's because when I was putting down that initial pencil, what happened was I had some darker areas, some lighter areas, and that's still reflected. So I'm not smudging all of this in so hard that I'm ruining all of that work that I've already done. Nice and light. All I'm trying to do here is fill in all the white space. And for those of you who are curious, this is just copy printer paper, and this is the cheapest paper you can get. I would recommend, if you're just practicing, just to get really cheap paper. And when you're doing a better piece, you can invest in some nice cold pressed 90-pound or even 200-pound. If you want to get really expensive, you can get into the $5 and $10 sheets, like Arches and Stonehenge paper. Okay, that's all colored in now, and it's already starting to look pretty reasonable. What I'm going to do now is switch over from my dull side, because these tips can ruin pretty easily by pressing. So I'm going to switch over. What I like to do is have one side for harder and one side more for detail. And now I'm going to work with the outside edge and just create these little squigglies that come out. This is going to read like these curls are sort of sticking out everywhere. Now keep these going in all different directions. It's really important. You don't want anything to look too uniform, because then it starts to look artificial if it's too uniform. So I'm breaking up that outer line. Some of these softer lines. And you can see we're not really drawing individual curls. We're drawing more the illusion of curls. And then what your brain does is it sees these outside curls that are more detailed, and it just assumes that all of this interior space is made of the same stuff. That's the brain working there. So you have to kind of use what the brain does in order to trick your audience a bit. And so you see a little curl like that. The trick is that the person's brain will fill in the rest. Let's work with a little more detail. If you find that you don't have enough graphite here that you've smudged from other areas, you can load it up by just scraping some on there. That's an old trick. And then you come to these individual curls. You see, sometimes I go that way and sometimes that way. That's up to you. But you just want to keep everything variable. We're almost done. The next step is to take that Tombow Mono 0 and just erase into it some of those curls that you put down from your original construction line. So again, you're going to follow the shape of the head. We have this idea that we're trying to create here, that they're all kind of on the top, flowing down on each side. Now, something about smudging is when you smudge the graphite into the texture of the paper, it becomes harder to erase. So graphite's always easiest to erase before it's pressed into the paper. And because the light is from the top, I'm going to lighten some of these areas in the top more than the areas in the bottom. Doing that curling motion. You just kind of work your way all the way around, breaking up any areas that you think are too light, too dark. You're looking for some, not chaos, but you're looking to create difference. Anywhere you have a pattern that you've created, I'm going to kind of break up that pattern. Let's go back in now with my darker pencil. And just add some details where I think I might need a few extra details, or if something's too light, these ones are a little too light, just going to make them darker. And that's going to be pretty much it. This quick demonstration was about, I don't know if it's under 15 minutes or so, but if it's more than 15 minutes, I will put it into 2 different videos. I think I'm probably over 15 by now. I'll put it into 2 different videos. But if a really careful drawing like this, I would probably take 3 days and really place each curl carefully and really work on trying to get specific with things. But until you're at a point where you can do it reasonably quickly, I would recommend not getting too deep into trying to be perfect with your drawing. I think perfection is the killer of creativity. It really stifles it. You think you see something, you want to do it, and if you can't do it, a lot of perfectionists just quit. But you realize that the struggle itself is the learning process. It's not supposed to be good. It's not supposed to be immediately doable the first time you try it. If you could do it perfectly the first time, you wouldn't be rewarded the same for your efforts. You wouldn't say, oh yeah, I tried and it was worth it and now I can do it. It's kind of like sitting down at a piano. You don't expect to be able to play all of these amazing pieces straight away, and that's fine. But when you can put in the time, when you do put in the time, and then you end up being able to do something that you couldn't do, the feeling is just so much more rewarding. So I would say just stay with it if you're struggling, and really look at the pieces that you make and try to examine what's working and what's not working. You can just keep going back into that. You can go back in with smudging, you can go back in with erasing, and just take your time. Anyway, you have now all of the principles on how to draw curly hair. I hope you found this educational. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will try it. And we'll be back next week with the last in the series. And that's how to draw coily hair. Have a wonderful creative week. And I'll see you in the next one.